welcome to the Masterclass series for CFOs brought to you by Imarticus Learning. We are thrilled to have you join us as we explore a critical aspect of corporate finance that impacts mergers and acquisitions across industries. Walkthrough of M&A structure pre and post deal. Today, we are honored to be guided by none other than Mr. Manish Dokania, the CFO of Aditya Birla Group and a respected member of ICAI. With his vast experience in managing large-scale M&A transactions, Mr. Dokania will provide us with unparalleled insights into the intricate world of deal structuring from due diligence to post-merger integration. Get ready to deepen your understanding of how mergers and acquisitions reshape businesses and industries. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Manish Dokania.
Great. Guys, we start now. So good morning, everyone.
Very good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
So my name is Manish Dokania. I work as CFO for the chemicals business at Aditya Birla Group. I have been working with Aditya Birla Group for a while now, and I have worked in multiple geographies, both India and abroad. And because of my work, I have had a chance to get a ringside view of a lot of M&A deals, transactions. And, I'd be happy to share my experiences here with you. So while we will go into the background, the basics, and we will also cover the theme with some key live examples, which I, kind of have gone through. I am okay if you interrupt me during the course of the presentation. I want to make this an participative, interactive session. So feel free to raise your hand and, we can engage in any discussion, questions that come to your mind. Of course, we will have a Q&A at the end, but, if you feel like you want to really discuss something, talk about something, I'll be happy to, engage. So, do not worry. It is not going to be a very formal kind of a session. So let's, enjoy the journey together. So to get started, in the run to the $5 trillion economy, I believe M&As are going to play an important role for India. India is in a sweet spot with corporate balance sheets being reduced leverage on the corporate balance sheet, the NPA issues behind us in the banking circle, thanks to the policies that have been implemented over the last 2 decades. So we are in a very healthy banking environment, which is very conducive of M&A. So I believe timing of this presentation could not have been better. And we will touch upon elements of a successful M&A, pre and post transactions, build versus buy decisions, because I believe build versus buy is one of the most important, dilemmas in front of all corporates. And we'll also touch upon, the pitfalls and why M&As fail. And we'll end with Q&A. Okay. So with that, we move. So what drives M&A? What is the need for M&A? So I believe, while there we can, talk of hundreds of reasons, but broadly these 4, catchments kind of cover all the associated reasons for doing M&A. So one is clearly to expand, to grow the business, to go into new geographies, while retaining the core, the flavor of the existing business, we replicate the business in new geographies, diversify, and grow. So that's the most simple and, the common reason why M&As happen. Then, of course, to get synergies of scale, economies of scale, we believe we have a adequate size, strength, which will allow us to expand and which does not add new costs, so which unleashes the full potential and hence the synergies and economies of scale. To participate in the value chain, what I mean by value chain is a mining company venturing into production. So a mining company which was mining coal, iron ore, starts producing, let's say, steel. So then it is participating in the value chain. A steel company goes further into, manufacturing of windows, car bodies, going further downstream. So that is value chain. So participating in the value chain. And finally, to acquire technology. So a lot of M&As are done to get technology. A company may have, everything going, but it may not have the cutting edge technology, the new age technology. And that is where M&As become important. Tata acquired JLR. Tata Motors, had a certain technology. I would not say good, bad, ugly, but there was room to expand and to play the new technology, and the JLR platform helped it do that. So today, Tata Motors is a formidable auto major, not just domestically exporting to a lot of countries, but all of it because it acquired JLR, the Jaguar Land Rover. So these are broadly the buckets in which I can classify the reasons why we do M&As. Moving on. So the strategic dilemma, as I mentioned. So this question is always there in front of us. We can grow the business organically by building. That means we build one more factory, we expand at the same site. So that option is always there versus buying, doing a M&A transaction, buying out a competition entity. So that these two are classic dilemma and which is there and which will always be there. We will go specifically into each of these elements as we progress, but it's a factor of speed. Buying allows you to reach out to the market with greater speed versus building. When you build, there is an inherent timeline associated with building, 2 years, 3 years, and then getting the product commercially ready, qualifying with the individual customers. So all of these take time. So building has its own set of nuances. Of course, buying has its own as well. Buying is about willing to pay that premium for timing the market, for moving fast. So this dilemma will always be there, and we will talk about it more. Don't worry about the contents of the slide. We will cover all of it with live examples. So again, just like the need for M&A, similarly in build versus buy, I have again bucketed them into, 5 key pointers which decide what we want to do. And at the end of this slide, I will give you one word which will help you decide that whether to build or buy. First one obviously is the cost. So there is a cost associated with building a business, and there is a cost associated with acquisition. Normally, in an acquisition scenario, one is expected to pay a premium, and the premium is on account of various reasons. So we'll always have to decide what is the worth, what is the value that we are willing to invest, which will help us decide between, doing it on our own by the capex route or by the acquisition route. The next important factor is timing for the market. Do we do it? So obviously buying allows us to time the market immediately. Building, like I said, takes its own time. Now, in a commodity, I believe timing is not really important. A steel is a steel is a steel. Whether you buy someone and put it on the market today versus you build and put it in the market 3 years later. So a commodity, I doubt, the timing of the market is not as important in a commodity versus a specialty versus a FMCG. Timing becomes more important in an FMCG kind of a space. Next one is price and volume. Here, what I mean is, you know, is there an oversupply in the market? Is the market starved? So, which will allow us to get market share. And so price and volume, so we can always get volume by undercutting the price. But is that desired? So the ideal scenario will be we get volume and we get premium. So we'll have to see the space that is available in the marketplace based on price and volume. If the market is starved, it would be good to add more capacity and get it into the market quickly. But if the market is oversupplied, by building more, we will erode the pricing power for all the players, including us. So that obviously is not something which is the right thing to do. The next one is about intangibles. Intangibles here again means brand, IP, technology. There is a brand. A Starbucks is a brand. You cannot do much about it. So if you want to go play that game, you will have to acquire the brand. That brand has an inbuilt premium associated with it. A BMW has a premium associated with it. Today I launch a car, Chinese manufacturers, there are hundreds of Chinese companies producing automobiles, top class, but they do not have that brand value, which kind of makes them a local play. So build versus buy becomes very important when we think of intangibles. I will give you a thought. I will leave all of you with a thought. Think of how many globally recognized brands do we have in India? Indian brands globally recognized, last, 75 years of independence. But think of it, how many globally recognized brands do we have? And if you believe that we do not have enough, think of reasons why we do not have enough. And we will discuss it again at the end of my presentation, and let's talk a little more about it. And the final one, of course, is location. Location has a very huge impact on our decision. We may not realize it, but location is a very powerful decision element. To locate a power plant in the hinterland versus on the port has a huge impact. If a power plant is located on the port, you have an option to get coal from domestic sources or imports. But if you are located in the middle, you are located in Chhattisgarh, is an example, import is not really an option for you because the transportation cost will be huge. A hotel, location is the most important element in the case of a hotel. So to get to the right location, the only choice you have is acquire. Taj, these large brands, they keep on acquiring properties at the right location because you will not be able to build. You will not get environment clearance to build. So those who have built over the years have that advantage of location. So the next one is location. And all of this, if you, to answer all your dilemma, I said there is one word. And that one word is NPV, the net present value. Everything can be, summed up. There's one bucket which will catch everything is NPV. So all our decisions, if we think, is it NPV accretive or is it destroying NPV? And we will be able to make the right call. So NPV is our, guiding star. the North Star. So whenever we are faced with this dilemma, our objective, our target should be to come up with the NPV in all the possible scenarios, and the option which generates the maximum, the best NPV is our option to go forward with. And I'll tell you a story. When Mahabharata was written, Vyasa had written Mahabharata. It was running into some 100,000 slokas. So Vyasa went to Narad to seek his advice on how does it, so to proofread it on behalf of him and give him his advice on what does he feel. So Narad told him that, it is the best document that is ever written. It will be guiding mankind for billions and billions of years, but it is too long. In this Facebook and Instagram age, people will not have the patience to go through Mahabharata. So he requested Vyasa to convert it into a smaller scripture. And what did Vyasa do? So Vyasa wrote down Gita, which was a miniature version, which all the contents of Mahabharata with 700 verses. And, so Vyasa thought that this is what Narada was looking for, and that will be helping him, communicate the message. Again, he went back to Narad. Again, he asked for his feedback. Again, Narad said, so this is the best. This is the Amrit, and it has summed up everything. And, there could not be anything better than this. But again, if it can be further compressed, it would be very good, because people will not have time to go through so much in this modern age, in this, digital driven age. So he requested Vyasa to compress it further. So Vyasa then compressed it into one sentence. And we all know that sentence, that do your duty. So that karmanya vadiraste ma phalesu kadachana. So it's NPV is all about that. So for us, it is that one phrase which allows us to, summarize all our decisions in one bucket. Moving forward, I see on the chat window, no, there's nothing. Okay. So moving forward. So build. So now
we will get this presentation, right?
I'm not sure, Kuldeep. That I'm not sure. I would urge all of you to make your notes if necessary. That would be better.
Generally, we are getting it. So it is all your prerogative. If you want to share this, you can share it.
I will. Okay. I will. Don't worry about it. I'll do that. Okay. So now we will talk a little more about the build, the organic, the growth story. So when we build a venture, we can control the process, we can control, the efficiencies, we can control the technology that we want. We can, it helps us bring in new technology, which generates the best in class efficiency, which means the best possible cost, the most efficient, manufacturing setup. We can decide at the pace at which we want to build. We can decide on which are the areas we want to launch first. So we can streamline the risk profile the way we want. So all of this is an advantage when we are building. The pitfall, of course, is the biggest one is it brings new capacity into the market. So which means that, if it's an oversupplied market, like we discussed, we are adding more to it, which is not helping anyone. Obviously, the timing, the gestation period in a build scenario is longer. So which means we lose out on the opportunity if it's a ready opportunity in the market. So that is something which is an important element which decides whether we want to build. And then, of course, when we are building, it's mostly the same management team, the same bandwidth, which gets stretched into two parts. So there is a distraction for the management team, for the operating team. There is a burden on the talent. The focus, kind of gets shared, which does mean that it may impact the productivity of the existing setup. So building has its own set of challenges. Coming to buy. So obviously, the big advantage in a buy is the timing to the market. We can time the market very, very quickly. It does not bring new capacity to the market. It allows us access to well-established brands, supply chain. So that is a huge advantage in a buy decision. You already have access to raw material. You already have a pipeline, supply chain pipeline laid out, which allows you to move fast. You can always, build on the synergies, decide on the synergies. What are the areas that we want to focus on? You can, both the individual companies, the existing and the one that we acquire, we can play on the strength of each of the companies, which will bring about more and more synergies. It allows us diversification of our revenue streams, playing the upstream, downstream game, depending on what we have acquired. So it has all its advantages. The pitfalls, the most important one is the valuation, the financial prudence. If we have overpaid, what is the value? How do we ascribe the value? If we have overpaid, it will haunt us for a long, long time. A lot of, and we'll talk about it, paying a high value for a target, how difficult it is for the players to make a success of an M&A. Of course, there are integration challenges, a lot of cultural clash. If we have acquired a company based in China, based in Korea, based in Europe, based in US, they all have their own set of cultural nuances vis-a-vis India. And that, it requires a lot of maturity to handle those potential cultural clash. And of course, there will be, we may end up cannibalizing the products if we have acquired companies which are in the similar space. If I give you a higher quality product because of my acquisition, obviously the takers for the lower end of that product will be low. So which means that I am ending up cannibalizing my own product. So that has this element of risk associated in a buying decision. Moving on. This slide, kinds of talks about, and we will talk about, M&As in a bit. So this slide tells us 80% of the M&As fail. Globally, there are multiple studies which demonstrate that 80% of the M&As fail. And the story is same in India. Maybe a little less, but on the similar lines. And we will see why these M&As fail. Clearly there has to be some core, some reason which will help us to identify and sidestep these risks. Obviously, these risks cannot be avoided in an M&A transaction, but based on our process, our understanding, we can try and identify and address those risks. So coming to the pre and post. So why M&As fail? So M&As fail because we have not prepared enough. Because we go into an M&A, thinking it to be a cakewalk, assuming that it will provide us a linear growth story. No, it is not as simple as straightforward as that. I have listed about 10 bullets on each of the sides. What are the initiatives or actions that we need to do in preparation for an M&A? So before an M&A and after an M&A. So before an M&A, I believe the most important element in an M&A is the strategic fitment. And we will be using this S word again and again. in this entire discussion of 3 hours. So strategic fitment is the most important thing which decides whether an M&A will be a success or a failure. If an M&A is born from an alignment of strategic fitment, chances of its succeeding are very, very high. Versus an M&A done from a macho act, just to add more size, share, chances of that macho act will fail. So strategic fitment. Financial health of the target, meaning is it very, very stressed? Is it going through bankruptcy? Is there an ongoing dispute with the bankers? Are the credit rating agencies about to downgrade it? That is very important. That gives us a lot of insights into how the company would be run. Company that is financially stressed will not ascribe value capital to maintenance. The assets will be in poor shape. So it is very important to understand the financial health of our target. Of course, then it is about valuation and pricing. What is the value that we are ascribing for the target? And that will come from multiple ways, and we will talk about valuation separately. Due diligence. It is very, very important to undertake deep due diligence so that we understand the value drivers, the nuances of the target that we are talking about. The regulatory hassles, the rules around antitrust laws. We cannot just go and acquire. If we acquire something where we are already a dominant force, the regulators will force us to divest, which will take away a lot of benefit from the M&A. So then there is about risk assessment in the market, in the operations, what is it that, the ecosystem that is around it? Is it favorable? Is it unfavorable? Is the regulator supportive of it? Is the government supportive of it? If we are going and acquiring a company based out of China, which is supplying a lot of precursors, there are chances that government may impose a large anti-dumping duty on it, which will mean that your M&A is about to fail. So risk assessment from that perspective. Integration, we lay out a detailed integration plan. Who will lead the integration, break it down by teams, element-wise, and what will be the timing and how we will go about it. The financing of the M&A transaction, we have to line up how do we intend to finance the M&A, the share by going by the share swap route or an all cash deal, or there are multiple ways of financing an M&A deal. So we'll have to be clear on what is the direction or what is our plan for the financing. Communication strategy for all the stakeholders, investors, customers, employees, and this has to be absolutely clearly written in black and white. It cannot be gray. The day you announce the M&A, the transaction, within the next 24 hours, you will have to also lay out your communication strategy. You will have to engage with the key customers, suppliers, employees, so that they understand the logic, the vision, the reason behind the M&A. So a clear communication strategy. And then, of course, a post-merger integration plan. So what happens after the merger? So obviously, post-merger, we have to see how our, the post-merger integration plan that we have prepared, we go about implementing it. We go about conducting a cultural integration. So again, this is where communication, transparency will play a very important role. We'll have to put the target employees at rest, that they will not be fired. They will be respected. They will be treated well, and they will be given equal opportunities. So all those things, it has to be communicated very, very clearly. The KPI monitoring, the key performance indicators, that how is it, what were the KPIs, 6 quarters before our acquisition, how is it moving? Is it moving in the right direction? If any KPI is not moving in the right direction, we go about, addressing those KPIs. The next one is all about, retaining the right talent, the talent management, having a retention plan in place for the talent. If we lose key talent, anyway, we will not succeed. Anyway, transaction is difficult. And on top of it, if we lose key talent, it adds to the burden. So how do we go about maintaining, renewing the customer supplier relations? Continuous engagement with the legal regulatory authorities, the tax compliances, carry forward of losses. How are we going about it? So there are a lot of nuances, both in, pre and post. So the summary is we have to go into a M&A very well prepared. And to the extent feasible, it should be in black and white. If it's not, if it's in the mind of someone, chances are it will fail. So we talked about valuation. So there are multiple ways of valuing a M&A transaction. I have listed some, the most common being market multiple. We ascribe a value to the target by way of market multiple, a 6x of EBITDA as an example. The next one is book value. What is the book value? The classic book value of the target. The next one is what is the replacement cost? If we were to create the asset of a similar size today, what will be the replacement cost associated with it? And then, of course, the discounted cash flow, classically, the one that we use the most is the discounted cash flow, which gives us in terms of NPV, the valuation of the target. And then capitalization of the earnings. What is the earning that is generating, and hence what should be the value? And based on this, we arrive. So these are all, various ways of valuing a target. None of them is, be all and end all. We have to value it through multiple ways and then arrive at a median, which gives us a basis to negotiate value with the target. So in this case, if we believe 150, 160 is the median, so we anchor our discussions around 150, 160. We know as long as we get this target at 150, 160, we are good. It will generate value. But suppose we end up paying, there is a bidding war and there are more than one suitors and everyone wants that asset. And if we end up paying 250, 260, probability is that we have overpaid and the chances of the success of this M&A will be low. So that is the point, so hence the valuation becomes very, very important. Due diligence. I have laid out the due diligence, we undertake due diligence covering various areas. So it is important, I've just put a grid here. So these are the areas which are super critical, super important when we undertake the due diligence. Due diligence requires a lot of specialists, lawyers, financial experts, taxation experts, deal structuring. So we need a lot of experts going into the due diligence process. It takes, depending on the size of the target, it can take 1 month, it can run into 3 months, 4 months. So what is it that we have kind of uncovered, discovered, learned during our due diligence process? It is important to capture it appropriately so that which allows us to add or reduce from the value, the median value that we have arrived at. So what are the risks around the debt? When is the debt maturing? Will we be able to refinance the debt at a similar rate, a lower rate, or a higher rate? Will we need consents from the existing lenders? What are the tax fiscal rules around it? Do we get a tax break? Do we have carried, or will we not be able to get? What is the size of the equity that we will need to? So the key, so what I am saying is I have listed here a matrix which, kind of sums up the areas that we need to deep dive when we are doing the due diligence. I have broken up into Asia because depending on what is the business that we are acquiring. If the business has multiple locations, then we have to be mindful of regulations, different regulations in different geographies. Europe will have a very different regulation vis-a-vis North America. We may face a challenge in Europe. We may not face a similar challenge in North America. So the idea is to capture the due diligence holistically. So that will allow us to plus or minus the value, the median value that we just arrived at and move forward, So that gives us that, so this is the median value. And then based on the due diligence, we do a plus minus to arrive at the value that we should be paying for the target. As I said, I have grown in ABG and I have worked in ABG's Aditya Birla Group. And I have worked in Aditya Birla Group over many, many years. So, just to give you a snapshot of how ABG has gone about. So in the 90s, ABG was largely a India and Southeast Asia based business house. Today, ABG has 50 plus operations, 58 operations in 50 plus countries. It is present across the world. Barring Arctic, Antarctica, I think it is present across all the continents on the world map. Manufacturing heavy conglomerate that it was, today it has strong presence in services, in, the consumer side of it, along with manufacturing. We were largely a, leader in India. Today, we are amongst the top in the world. So basically, we have used M&A, very, very well to reach where we are today. This is the simple point I'm trying to make. So ABG has used a lot of M&As to reach where it is today. So M&As have helped. That is the point. And so we will spend a lot of time on this. So the key theme, whatever I've talked about so far in the last, 8-10 slides, I will kind of present everything or, anchor everything into this Hindalco example. I don't know if how many of you are aware, Hindalco had done a large M&A, 3 times its own size by acquiring Novelis in the year 2007. So, and that has a lot of elements which we will cover in today's discussion. So I'll start with the background of Hindalco, and then we will, see how superimpose that, how M&A was important for Hindalco. So Hindalco was a small, setup in UP. It was a 20,000 ton aluminium smelter, single location, and a very profitable company. So it was generating super profit. We had, expanded capacities. We had from 20 KT, we reached 240 capacity, 240,000 ton capacity. We expanded well and we're growing well. So it was a fairly profitable company and growing well. What is Hindalco all about? So Hindalco manufactures aluminium. And how do we manufacture aluminium? We use bauxite and coal. We mine bauxite and coal, take the bauxite through the refinery, take the coal to the power plant, generate power. From the refinery, we get aluminium. And from the power plant, we get power. And we use through the, the pot rooms or the, let's say the electrolysis, we get aluminium and the aluminium metal, which is then converted into value-added products. And there's the reason why value-added products is here in this slide in a separate color. And we will talk more about it. So, and then whatever aluminium is produced is sold at something called the LME price, London Metal Exchange price. And that is the broad value chain of Hindalco. So Hindalco, at the turn of a century, was a single location smelter, super EBITDA margin, 41% EBITDA margin, 41%, which is a fantastic EBITDA margin, insignificant in size. It was barely 1% of the global aluminium, requirement of the aluminium production size. The most important thing, it was heavily protected. There was a huge import duty. So anyone importing aluminium into India from outside had to pay 35% import duty. So which was a super advantage for Hindalco, because that was something which, which allowed Hindalco to price its metal accordingly. Of course, the base was LME and then the duty was put on top of it. And hence Hindalco was generating super profit from whatever it was producing. So it was extremely successful business, insignificant in size, dependent on duty protection, and not ready for the future. You will recall around the 90s, India's economy opening up, and we kind of did away with these large-scale duty protection and made it, to reach to the global scale. So, while it had many, many positives, the challenges or the negative facets, the technology was old. There was no reason to invest in high-end new technology because the EBITDA margin was very, very good. So there was no need to do anything about it. The business was running well. So why fix what ain't broken? It was as simple as that. Dependence on coal supply. We were buying coal from outside, which was available in abundance, but which had started changing in the year 2000. The government had started auctioning of coal mines. There were physical limitations of growth at the location where Hindalco was, Renukoot. There was this huge duty protection, which we will talk about, and it was exposed to the LME fluctuations. That means the top line was dependent on LME. It was not in Hindalco's control. If the LME came down, Hindalco's realization would have come down. So, in sum, unsustainable cost structure, volatile cash flows, and threat of marginalization. It was only 1% in the global map. So it always faced that threat of marginalization. So just to give you a feel that how...
What is LME, sir? LME?
Yeah. So Akash, LME is London Metal Exchange. So whenever you do any commodity, buy any commodity, it is priced in London Metal Exchange terms. When we go to buy, in this case, aluminium, it is quoted on the London Metal Exchange. Suppose the price is $2,000. So $2,000 multiplied by the exchange rate, 2,000 into 83, that is the price in the domestic market, multiplied by the duty factor. The same applies to gold, silver, copper, zinc. When we buy gold in India, the price is fixed based on LBMA, London Bullion Metal Exchange. We believe that Diwali में gold का भाव बढ़ जाता है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता है.
Okay, thank you, sir. This is new for me.
So London Metal Exchange determines the price of the commodities. That is the base at which the commodity is traded. So just to give you, this is more of a straw man, a theoretical, chart that if Hindalco continued as is, what would have happened? The coal cost would have gone up, this is all indexed from 100 to 224. The bauxite cost would have doubled and the wholesale price index of India would have increased, the wages, the labor costs. And because of the fall in duty was reduced from 35% to 5%, the effective realization would have become from 100 to 111. So what does all of this mean? So all of this mean that the profit, if Hindalco would not have done anything, from a 41% EBITDA margin, it would have turned negative. The profit would have turned negative by the year 2010. So hence, it was important for Hindalco to chalk out a strategy of how it wants to, move forward. So it was imperative to address these infirmities, even to survive. If nothing was done, Hindalco would have been, bankrupt. So now let me explain this chart. It's a little involved chart, but this is an important chart because this is where our story will fit. So Hindalco was a upstream player. Upstream here means aluminium producer, which mined bauxite, used bauxite to produce alumina and used alumina to produce aluminium. So that part of the value chain is called upstream. And then there are people who buy Hindalco's aluminium and convert it into value-added products. Aluminium is used in the window frames, in all our utensils, the pressure cookers, in all the vehicles, the hood of the vehicle, the wirings. So these are all downstream. So Hindalco was an upstream player wherein it was doing well. But when it sat down on the boardroom and discussed the strategy, we realized that upstream alone will not help. Because while upstream had very high margins, the margins were volatile. When the LME was high, the margins were good. When the LME was low, the margins were bad. LME was not in our control. LME was a function of the global production cost. And hence, it was important to go the downstream route. Hindalco thought that it is important that we also go the downstream route. For upstream, the key success matrices are to be the lowest cost producer, to have lien on resources, coal, bauxite, to get scale and technology so that we are the lowest cost producer, and to be in proximity to raw materials, in close proximity to raw materials, so that the supply chain is smooth, there is least disruption and low transportation cost. So that was the way, that were the success mantras for upstream play, which we believe was the organic route was the right way. That means build was the right way to play this. And on the downstream, the success mantras were about product differentiators. That means always ahead of the product game, working on product development, coming up with new products, better quality products, better USPs, quality and delivery just in time. That was very, very important for the downstream play. And it had to be close to the market. For upstream, it doesn't matter wherever you are located. All you have to supply, produce the aluminum and send it into the market. For downstream, it is important to be close to the market so that you are able to understand the customer preferences, the changing preferences, what is working, what is not working. And hence, the chosen route for Hindalco for the downstream play was acquisition. So while we knew we wanted to expand both in upstream and also go after downstream, it was clearly laid out that we will follow the organic route for upstream and go the acquisition route for the downstream. So this was a strategy that was kind of, laid out in Hindalco's boardroom. And then this is where the downstream play, the Novelis saga began. So we kind of zeroed down on the target, which was Novelis, and we went after that target, that this is what we want to do. This is what we want to acquire. But before we go there, I have a small video that I will play for all of you. This is from this movie called Invictus. I don't know if how many of you have seen this movie. If you have not, I would strongly urge all of you to see this movie. It is about Nelson Mandela's, taking office. So South Africa was, impacted by apartheid. That means the black versus white. And this movie kind of lays out how Nelson Mandela, went about it. So this is a clip, a 1-minute clip, which is Nelson Mandela's first day in office. The audio quality is poor, so do not worry about the audio quality. Just see this clip, try and follow the whatever you can, and I'll tell you the summary at the end.
Good morning.
Morgen. Het is nog vroeg.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Brenda, you've had your hair done. I like it.
Thank you, Mediba. Yeah, we need to talk about your cabinet appointments and ministers.
Give me one moment, please.
Yes, Mediba.
After you, Comrade President.
Thank you, sir.
Office of the President, good morning.
Brenda, please assemble all the staff for me. All those who haven't already left.
Right now, all of them?
Yes, please.
Yes, Mediba. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to follow me, please. The President would like to speak with you.
Here he comes. Yeah. He wants the satisfaction of firing us himself.
I'd like you to stay out here. I cannot talk to them hiding behind men with guns. Going more, Alma. Good morning. How are you this morning? Fine. It's good to see you. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Some of you may know who I am. I could not help noticing the empty offices as I came to work this morning, and all of the packing boxes. Now, of course, if you want to leave, that is your right. And if you feel in your heart that you cannot work with your new government, then it is better that you do leave right away. But if you are packing up because you fear that your language or the color of your skin or who you worked for before disqualifies you from working here, I am here to tell you, have no such fear. What is Rabbi is Rabbi. The past is the past. We look to the future now. We need your help. We want your help. If you would like to stay, you would be doing your country a great service. All I ask is that you do your work to the best of your abilities and with good heart. I promise to do the same. If we can manage that, our country will be a shining light in the world.
So guys,
Super.
Wonderful.
this was a small clip, and you would, if you are thinking, what is it doing here in M&A, in a finance discussion, I will, of course, discuss this, but, if any one of you have a point of view, that this clip is misfit in this discussion.
No, it is a perfect fit, sir. Because this is in context of Hindalco buying Novelis. So I can very much relate this scene that company from underdeveloped or developing world buying a company in a fully developed world. So this cultural shock which the US people will have or would have faced, it is reflecting very much on that.
Very well said, Pundit. Very well said. So, guys, this is a very powerful, 2 minutes. It tells us how, irrespective of what we learn, what we train, it is about how we perform, how we see, how we deliver at the moment, in the moment. Nelson Mandela walking into his office, seeing, and remember, Nelson Mandela was fighting for the rights of blacks, in a regime run by the whites. He was for equal rights. He was not against the whites. Think of it. He wanted the blacks also to have equal rights. So when he walks into his office and he sees the staff is leaving. Remember, staff is mostly white. The bureaucracy is from the erstwhile government, and they are mostly white. And they feel that with this new black president coming in, we will have no role. So we will be asked to leave. So might as well pack our bags and leave. When he sees that, he quickly calls for a town hall, and he addresses them. And he says that, some of you may know me. Everyone knows Nelson Mandela. Who doesn't know Nelson Mandela? What he means is some of you know me, meaning you understand what I'm trying to say. Know me is not knowing me as a person. Know me meaning knowing my philosophy. I am for equal rights. So, those who want to stay and, work with the new government, you are more than welcome. We need you. Do have no fear. So basically, M&A is no different. A success of an M&A depends on the, take it, how we go about it, how we communicate, what is the storyline that we have, and, how we communicate the storyline to the team. If we do not do that, and if we, I don't know, my screen is struck here. Just give me half a second so that I can, change my screen and move forward. Yeah. So if we are not able to communicate our story well, and if there is resentment, that M&A transaction is going to fail for sure. So that is the simple point that I wanted to convey. So success of M&A is hugely dependent on how we communicate, how we try and bring about the cultural fitment. If we bring about the cultural fitment, chances of business fitment, business success moves in disproportionately higher. And lack of that, of course, means we are planning for, irrespective of how sharp our, business focus may be. But, we are starting from a huge handicap, which will impact our transaction, our business going forward. So we talked about a lot of M&As fail, 75-80% M&As fail. Again, I have bucketed the reasons as I have understood in these 4 buckets. And these are very, simple, straight reasons. Lack of strategic fitment, doing an M&A for a macho act. Overvaluation, paying disproportionately high value, which is, which kind of means that chances are we will fail at the end of the life cycle. Failure to communicate, not communicating adequately with the team. Both the teams must understand that this M&A has been done with a certain strategic objective. No point trying to hide it in the boardroom. So the communication should go all the way to the soft floor. Every employee working for the company must understand what is the objective behind this M&A. It is not just that our treasuries were overflowing and we went and bought this company. That doesn't work. And finally, the cultural incompatibility led failures. Just see the last line. It is like welcoming a daughter-in-law into the home. The atmosphere, the ecosystem has to be conducive. When we went about, we heard these kind of, things, that Aditya Birla Group is an Indian company which doesn't allow non-veg food in its, offices. So will I get non-veg food in my canteen? We are talking about a US, a Europe, and Australia, where non-veg food is equal part of, maybe more part of the dietary, requirements. So people were concerned that will we get non-vegetarian food? Will you change the name of my company? Novelis is a very well-known brand in the aluminium downstream industry. Now, will you add a new name? Will you make it Hindalco? Will you do something about it? It's a simple question. We can choose to ignore it. We can choose to address it. If we address it, it takes away that variability. Will my visiting card have a new logo? Will my title change? I was a vice president. Will they demote me and make me a general manager? All kinds of questions. They have not sent any person from the headquarters. Are they serious about this? Are they serious about this acquisition? These are very simple, straight things. I mean, all of you know, all of that is in public domain. Tata Chorus trapped in the bidding war. Overvalued bidding war. Rio Tinto Alcan, you may not be familiar with it. Rio Tinto paid top dollar for Alcan at the peak of the commodity cycle. It never recovered. Holcim and Lafarge, they are still undoing the transactions to get value out of it. Daiichi Ranbaxy, multiple cultural issues. So the limited point here is these are very simple reasons. While it may sound very simple, but these are the core reasons why M&A fail. not because of, the financials, not because of the business not performing. The core reasons are around these, which are easier to address if we communicate well. That's the message. And that is what that movie clip was conveying, and M&A is not only about acquisition. M&A is also about divestments. We must understand that what is the value of the business? How does the business fit in the current strategy? What is the growth prospect? How does it create value going forward? If it is not visible, if the fitment is not clear, then it is better to exit and divest that line of business. No point dragging it, because it will have its own impact on the management bandwidth. So we exited a lot of businesses: sponge iron, copper mines, textiles, some portion of textiles, BPO, oil refinery. So portfolio repair is also an integral part of an M&A strategy. It is not just about acquisition. So, and it is better to exit as going concern, because if you do not exit as going concerns, you will end up into a situation of distress, and which is not good, which is not desired. So back to the Novelis saga. So Hindalco, just remember, Hindalco is an India-centric upstream player, and Novelis is a target that Hindalco is going after to play the downstream game. So why Novelis? Hindalco did a desktop research, of all the aluminium downstream players out there, and zeroed down on its target. Hindalco identified top 2 targets that it wants to go after, and target number 1 obviously was Novelis. Why Novelis? Novelis had certain attributes that we will talk about, was a one-time opportunity. And to create a similar size downstream play would have taken 10 to 20 years. And to build that brand equity on top, and the replacement cost huge. So Hindalco knew that if we are able to go after this company and acquire this company, it will be a game changer. Hindalco, Novelis was a perfect fit for Hindalco. Why? So Hindalco was a large upstream player, among the lowest cost producers in the world for aluminium. And Novelis had a market-leading portfolio of downstream products. Every second can in the world, the aluminium can that we use to drink Pepsi or a Coke or a beer, is produced using Novelis's aluminium. So it had a fantastic portfolio. Hindalco's cash flows were cyclical, dependent on the commodity prices. Novelis was a engineering company, a downstream company, where the cash flows were very, very stable and predictable. For Hindalco, success was all about low-cost commodity operations. For Novelis, it was about cutting-edge technology, new products, downstream products. So it was a technology company. For Hindalco, proximity to raw material was the most important. For Novelis, proximity to customers. It was at the heart of customers. So that was, which allowed it to come up with products that were in fashion. Play with the right products. Hindalco's operations were very, very energy intensive. Every unit of aluminium requires a lot of energy to produce. On the other hand, Novelis was among the most sustainable global aluminium companies, the world's largest aluminium recycler. So, which was a nice fit from the sustainability prospect as well. But of course, Novelis had its own set of challenges. Otherwise, why would it, even consider an M&A? So Novelis was trapped in a few, things. And the key one was being decentralized functions. Novelis had operations in 4 continents, in 12 countries, 30 plants, but it was a decentralized operations. Each plant was behaving as a fiefdom. Each, continent was separate. There was no centralized control. Of course, there was a head office, but it was more like an aggregator. Each regions, each continents were behaving like their own kingdoms. So very difficult to get any synergies out of it. Multiple regions used to quote to the same customer. A Coke used to get a quote from Novelis Europe, Novelis Asia, and a Novelis America. So Coke used to play Novelis Asia and Novelis America within each other to get a better pricing. It's as simple as that. So there were huge liquidity concerns. Bankers were not willing to give them any new loans. They were struggling with their SEC filings. Their annual reports have not been filed for many years. Their accounts were not current. Their accounts were not being relied upon by the investors, bankers. It was not a listed company. So the bankers, and they were struggling with contracts called can price ceiling. They had offered contracts with price ceilings to their customers, and the raw material prices have gone above those ceiling prices. So they were buying raw material at a higher prices and selling at a lower prices to their customers because they were contractually bound to do that. And then there was inadequate risk management. Here, risk management meaning hedging. A commodity company has to have a lot of hedging. Hedging is, addressing the metal price risk, the currency risk, the interest risk. That is a separate discussion altogether, much beyond the scope of our, this discussion today. So, but in sum, it was about eliminating the risk of, forex, metal prices, and interest rate. So they did not have an adequate risk management system. So Novelis had its own set of challenges which they were grappling with. So what was Novelis's value proposition for Hindalco? First and foremost, Novelis had a marquee customer base. Every downstream, player in the world was Novelis's customer, whether it was the Mercedes, whether it was BMW, Ford, all the auto majors, all the electronic majors, the LG, the Samsung, all the beverage companies, whether it was on the carbonated drinks or the alcoholic drinks, Coke, Pepsi, and Anheuser-Busch, all of them were Novelis's customers. So it had a marquee customer base spread across the world. Truly global presence. Presence across 12 countries, serving, these customers from their 30 plants. So amazingly global presence. An exemplary team, fantastic team, a huge leadership pipeline, a hotbed of engineering talent. Novelis had tie-up with almost, all the big universities in the region where it operates. In Atlanta, it has a tie-up with Georgia Tech. In Switzerland, it has a tie-up with the Sierra University. So everywhere, Göttingen University in Germany. So Novelis had a tie-up with all the big universities where it operates, which allowed them to get, the engineering trainees, which was a win-win for both. For the universities, they got a, manufacturing setup to send their students. Novelis got the best students, the best brains to come and work for them. So which led, and then they chose to make their career with Novelis. Once they join them as a trainee, they understand the value of the company. So an exemplary team, a deep leadership pipeline, and of course, world-class assets, the expertise. Novelis is the world's largest recycler of aluminium, which, puts it as a huge advantage compared to competition. So this is what Novelis brought in for Hindalco. So this is a slide from the first Novelis Leadership Summit, wherein we presented to the top 100 Novelis leaders. This strategy meet was being held in Lisbon, Portugal, and all the Novelis leadership team was there. And we presented this slide to them. So what we told them is, so just look at this slide that, the primary producers are making money, the can makers are making money, the fillers are making money. It is only we, FRP's flat roll product, the space in which Novelis operates, are not making money. Novelis was amongst the lowest value creator in the chain. So we gave this message to the Novelis team. While you may believe you are the best manufacturing company, you have the best engineering talent, but you are not generating any value. And this was an eye-opener. The term that we coined for them, which they, you know, which they kind of took it to heart and then used it to turn the company around, was satisfied underperformers. The term that we coined was satisfied underperformers. We were underperforming, but we were satisfied. So this box, the red line, indicates that if the EBITDA moved to $1.1 billion, they would get their rightful share of the value chain. So this was the chart we used to, which was we had used in our first meeting with the Novelis's leadership team. By the way, today Novelis's EBITDA is about $2 billion. So what was Hindalco's approach for Novelis? So what Hindalco, and Hindalco has been in the business. Hindalco knew what aluminium business is all about. It knew the space. So it was in a position to identify the gaps. So clearly focus on value. Let go of the volume. Even if it means we lose a few orders, so be it. So move on from a mindset of quantity to quality. Cost consciousness. We coming from India have a huge, have a huge, bedrock around being cost conscious. So the cost consciousness mindset was kind of, socialized with the Novelis team. Speed, moving fast, taking the decisions, behaving like one central unit. Instead of, moving from one plant to a region to a HO to take decisions, that doesn't help. Novelis was an R&D focused company with customer needs in mind, and we kind of supported that. We kind of supported the R&D. It was a huge cost when we look at it, but we thought that was the right cost to be incurred. So we supported the Novelis's R&D focus. Taking on challenges, believing in plausible certainty rather than definite possibility. At times, we wait for all the lights to turn green. That never happens. There will be a few red lights here and there, and entrepreneur gut is all about taking those calls on that red lights. So believe in plausible certainty. And of course, the right leadership. Basically, it was all about generation of trust across all levels. And not just Hindalco Novelis, it is within Novelis. The regions, trusting the HO, the units trusting the regions, so generation of trust. All of them speaking the same language, which was achieved, which can be achieved through the right, communication and transparency. And then this was all about buying, right? So this is about Novelis's acquisition, buying, and how did it help Hindalco. And then, of course, there was, if you remember, upstream. For upstream, Hindalco, the focus was to go organic, build. So what did Hindalco do? So Hindalco built for the downstream, the domestic portfolio. It increased the size of the domestic portfolio multiple times, brought in new assets, which allowed it to increase the size in a certain manner. Oh, sorry. So, and which also allowed Hindalco, see, in a upstream, the most important thing is lowest cost producers. So while Hindalco was at a 50% level in the 2008, in the early, and today it is amongst the lowest cost producers in the world. So the cost of production for Hindalco based on these greenfield investments is amongst the best in the world, far ahead of the Chinese smelters, which kind of has, the two key drivers for it. One is relying on resources and getting the right technology. So that has allowed Hindalco to build and be one of the lowest cost producers in the world.
Manish ji, so this is actually very good thing that we are beating China in at least some of the or one of the area. So do you see any other area where India is competitive than Chinese?
Now that is a very important question. So that is a very important question, and that is a journey I don't have an answer to that. I mean, of course, the government is focusing on so many things, but to be, to do to China what they have done to the world is not easy. We still struggle from, while we call that we are focused. You remember my question? That have we built any global brands? Think of it. Does any brand come to your mind? China has put in large factories. They produce, in India, there is only one company which does power plants, BHEL, right? The Bharat Heavy Electric. So there is only one company which does power plants for everyone. And there are smaller ones, Thermax and here and there. If you place an order for a power plant today in India, your gestation period is 2 years at the best. A small power plant. If you go for a bigger power plant, it can be as high as 3 years, 4 years. Why? China has hundreds of companies producing power plants. They can deliver a turbine, a boiler in 1 month's time. In India, you cannot even dream of it. All our industrial parks, while I don't want to be a critique, things have improved, but the fact remains, all our industrial parks, MIDC, GIDC, wherever you go, wherever you are located, while you may get a land, but you have to then arrange for your own water supply, own electricity, own effluent treatment, which is all up both in terms of cost and time, which has a huge cost. In China, when you go to an industrial park, everything is, at the click of the button. The power cable is right at the corner of your plant. All you have to do is plug it with the switchyard and you are live. Power connection, water connection is right up to your factory gate. You have to connect it with your internal pipeline and you have water. The effluents, they have a large central ETPs in you which carry all your effluent. So these are some of the challenges that we are still grappling with. The focus is there, things are improving, but we have some distance to go. That would be, my thought. There are a lot of, chemicals where, we believe, where there is an advantage, where, India government is supporting and where probably we will be at par with China, if not better. So there are a lot of areas where we, have a natural advantage. We have a lot of mineral deposits. See, India has one of the largest coal deposit in the world. The India's coal deposit is good enough to last 300 years, even at the current pace of consumption. So it is all about how do we make the power available to the industrial players at the right price. The infrastructure, has to be, we are doing it. The roads, the ports, I don't know if you're familiar, very large VLCC. How many ports in India are capable of handling a VLCC? Barely one. The entire country has just one port which can handle these large vessels. We have been dreaming of, putting up a project to bring these vessels in India, in the Indian waters for many, many years now. We have done studies and whatnot, but we do not have a port which is capable of handling these large carriers. Sri Lanka has one. Singapore has one. So what happens? These carriers call in at Sri Lanka. And then from Sri Lanka, the material is transit to India in the, more reasonable size boats. Unbelievable. A country like India does not have a port which is capable of handling these large VLCCs. So how do you move forward? So a lot has to be done.
The one port you said is which Mundra?
Yeah, Mundra handled the vessel earlier this year, correct. I mean, there are large ports. Gangavaram is there, Kochi is there. But all I'm trying to say is, there is some distance. I mean, just imagine, right? A vessel has to berth in Sri Lanka and then transship the goods to India. It is a joke.
So I think depth of the water is the issue for this.
Beg your pardon, Vikas. You have to.
Depth of the water depth, that is the issue, sir. In India, there is a lot of sand coming, and that's why we are not able to park very heavy ships.
All that can be done, Vikas.
You know, if I
Yeah,
list
dredging is
down,
happening, but it's a long drawn affair.
Correct.
that is true.
But
Vikas, if we list
recently,
down, go ahead.
government has announced this Vadwan port on Maharashtra coast
Correct.
near Danu, and hopefully that will solve the problem.
No, no, correct. Guys, this is just an example. Since we are doing this discussion, I want it to be a participative so that, you know, we all keep our eyes and ears open. You know, it's a Sunday afternoon time. It's easy to get into a siesta. So Vikas, I have a rule, you know, which I tell my team, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'll repeat it since you kind of prompted me to do it. You know, there are 123 ways to fail, and we can list down why we failed. And there is only one way to succeed. So we have to find that one way.
Correct.
It's as simple as that. You think Singapore does not have a challenge? You think Sri Lanka does not have a challenge? The draft, the sand, everyone has a challenge. You know, India has such a huge coastline which has so many advantages, which allows for natural ports. You know, India is in a very advantageous position from the natural resource perspective. You know, God has been very kind to us. It's about us how we, you know, make the most of it.
So this.
That's the point. Moving on. You know, so these are some of the, you know, these are more examples of build versus buy from my experience that I have brought in for you all. And, you know, these we will move a little fast. And, you know, if you have any. So another example, you know, some of you may know, we have been, you know, but before ABG, India has been a large textile play. India has been supplying textile to the world for a long, long time. You know, right from, you know, the pre-independence days, India has been at the forefront of textile play. And Aditya Birla Group has been in textile space for a long, long time. But, you know, today India has lost that advantage because obviously of the cost of conversion, cost of production. The advantage has gone to the likes of Bangladesh, Vietnam, you know, Cambodia, Thailand, you know, of course, to some extent, China. So wherein all these global majors are now sourcing from our neighboring countries. Now, so we, you know, we have large spinning mill operations. So we realized that, you know, there is a huge opportunity in the technical textiles. You know, what is a technical textile? Let me first give you a feel of what is a technical textile, and then we will come back. So the dress that is worn by the firefighters, which is like fire retardant, the soldiers, which allows for better levels of wear and tear, the cast house operations near, you know, high temperature, you know, workshops, the workwear which is worn by the police, the military, the, you know, the utilities, you know, textiles, all our, you know, the car, the seats, the convertibles, these are all, you know, the aeroplane seats, these are all technical textiles, you know, meaning these textiles have unique features which are not, you know, which are not commonly, if you see the blankets that are given in the airlines, those are thin blankets, small little packets, but keep very warm. So, you know, these are all, in some element, they are all technical textiles. So we had large, you know, we had large textile operations, but we did not have any access to these technical textiles. These technical textiles are controlled by about 10 players in the world. In the world, all in, there are 10 players who kind of have the know-how and who play this game. You know, a nylon, you know, a elastomer, they are very niche technology, and they are controlled by, you know, these few players. So the only way that you can play this game is by acquisition. So again, AB Aditya Birla Yan. So we had these aspirations, and how did we go about it? We identified a player and we went about acquisition. So so that was a so that is a, you know, again, a story of why it is important to buy. You know, so there were, so these you know, these technology play has a strong entry barrier, And the only way you can, play this game, play this value chain is by acquisition. So, it kind of lists that. So build versus buy, two more charts has, impact on, all stakeholders. But I have chosen two here, customers and employees, because build versus buy has a very important impact on customers and employees. For customers, a build strategy means a consistent quality, low disruption, consistent quality. But of course, it also means slower innovation. In a buy, it leads to disruptions. It leads to a change of roadmap of the products. You kill some products, you bring new products on the play, and of course, which leads to disruptions for the customers. They are used to a certain way of working. They have to change their way of working. They have to realign their machinery. So these are, so it is important, to understand the customer requirements when we are playing the build versus buy game. While the advantage is obviously it allows for rapid innovation. On the employee side of it, once we are building, it allows opportunities for employees, for the colleagues to grow in the organization. There are new, there are new roles that come up. So it's a good thing from the career perspective. Of course, it also means stretch the burden on them, because the same team is involved in the day-to-day operations and building new, building new assets. So it obviously is a huge stretch for the team. So which has its own set of nuances, which requires appropriate talent retention strategies. So on the buy, of course, then you get a nice expertise, a new set of expertise coming in, a renewed energy, a relook, a refreshed look. So that has its advantage in a buy strategy. Of course, then the challenges are integration-related challenges, huge cultural clash. We are used to a certain way of working, and which has its, which means we end up having, some differences with, in India, we are okay to work on a Saturday, Sunday, evening, not so much in Europe. If you call for a meeting on a Saturday in Europe, no one will turn up. So it's as simple as that. So there will be an element of cultural clash associated in a buy decision. So now coming to ABG, so what is working? Why, we acquired, we divested, we believe that, M&A has worked for us. So why? Only two reasons that come to my mind. Number one, each M&A, whether it was a buy or divestment, was born out of a strategic fitment and not a macho act. We do a lot of homework, a lot of research before we decide on what is it that we want to do, what is the path that we want to go, what is the target, what are the options. So huge debate, deliberation. We take, maybe 6 months. That also makes us slow, but that is the way it is. And that allows us to then go into the M&A with all our eyes open. So a strategic fitment. And then our approach is of partnership, amalgamation, and not of a conqueror. ABG always believes we do not fire the target leadership team, not our way of working. We find ways to work with them to the extent feasible. So we always believe in partnership. We do not send teams from India into our targets, maybe one or two, individuals to bring in the requisite expertise, to fill in the requisite expertise gap, but that is about it. We do not have this habit of sending a core team to all the new acquisition targets. No, that doesn't work. That we do not believe we have that expertise to do that. We believe when we have acquired the target has the right set of expertise to run the company. So that approach has worked well for us so far. I mean, as some of you may know, so we have a huge focus on, the environment around us, the ecosystem, the CSR activities. That is something which has helped us, while today it has become a buzzword, sustainability and, CSR and all that, but we have been doing it for forever. this has been an integral part of the way we do business, and which I believe has worked well for us. So that is something, the focus is always there. Just to give you an example, this is a coal mine. After we extracted the coal, this is the way the mine looks. This is in the state of Odisha. Just to give you an example. And after we have done, so we could have left it as it is, and we could have done some filling up with sand and all that, and no one would have, we still complied with the law. But see, what did we do? We converted it into a nice green belt. We grow paddy here. That paddy is, given with a nominal cost to the villagers around. So that has helped. This is the way, so it is important to, as the most, the responsible business citizen. So all of this put together, so, a transaction and M&A is not just a transaction. It has a complete ecosystem around it and how we think of it, which makes it a success or a failure. One important aspect, which I wanted to share with all of you is, that how do you present to the decision makers? At times we struggle to, present to the decision makers. We come up with, loads, hundreds and hundreds of slides, datas and notes, and it becomes very difficult to explain our story to the decision makers. So I've taken an example to explain what I mean. So this is, just to give you a feel that we have to be mindful of who is our audience, whom are we presenting to? Is it a soft floor audience? Is it a middle management? Is it a board of the company? So we have to be mindful of our audience and present the picture accordingly. If we are giving it to a middle manager, it had to be more granular. It has to be a 10,000 feet view. If we are giving it to a senior management, it has to be a 25,000 feet view. It has to be reasonably high level. And when we are presenting it to a board, it has to be more strategic. So we have to be mindful of who our audience is when we are making our presentations, which makes our presentations very, very impactful and powerful. So this was, this is what I had for today. And with this, I am okay to take any questions and whatever discussion that we want to do.
So in this amalgamation, where you acquired a US company and it was highly decentralized, how you got the centralization idea?
Because
stopped competing with each
because
other.
I'm missing you. You have to be a little louder, because please. I don't know. Maybe it's just my audio connection.
Okay. So in fact, you have taken a US company which was highly decentralized, and the problem was that it was competing. They were sending the tenders, competing with each other. So how you got all this in line, because that was their culture, that they think that each unit is its own profit center, and they are responsible for their own territory only. So
Yes, Vikas, I've got the question. So Vikas, you will be, so this was while it sounds very, very, very challenging and very difficult, but we used a simple fix and it is working very well. What we did is we defined the decision matrix in a very black and white manner. So what we did, so delegation of authority, what we call. So what we did is we clearly laid out that what we want each individual or each levels to do. So we laid out, suppose it's a sales transaction. So as long as the sales transaction is for 3 months, within 15,000 tons, the decision can be taken by the local unit. The moment it crosses that 3 months or 15,000 tons, it has to be, it has to go to the regional level, beyond the unit to the region. The moment it crosses, 100,000 tons or more than a year, it goes to the corporate for decision making. And the moment it crosses 1 million ton or 3 years, it goes to the board, Hindalco. So what happened with this? When we had the, right size of transaction, a big transaction. That allowed the headquarters to maneuver the decision making in the direction they wanted to, for the right size of customers. The decisions, were appropriately centralized, and this was across. When you are hiring, so it was clearly laid out who has the authority to hire at what level and at what level. Similarly for purchases, similarly for capital decisions. So this matrix became a unifying force within the organization, and it is working very well. Of course, we did a lot of things. This is just giving you one gamut, one aspect of it, and which is very, touch, feel, and we can relate to. So that helps. It helps in a big way. So the regional president knew that, this is the cutoff of my authority. That helps.
We also have those.
Sure. So see, it is important. See, Vikas, it is important to, to institutionalize the process. It is, we can have things, SOPs, policies, framed, emailed and everything, but if you do not follow it with army regimentary discipline, it doesn't help. We made the compliance officer from each region to certify that we are complying with the DOA every quarter. The regional compliance officer has to certify. Based on the regional certification, the HO General Counsel had to certify to the audit committee that the DOA is being complied with, which forced them to put in process to check if the DOA is being complied with. See, you may have a DOA, but how do you know it is being complied with or not? So there has to be a way
I
to
have to
ensure.
certify.
Beg your pardon?
I have to certify.
You see the point, Vikas? No, I'm saying, so how do you certify? You have to put in place a process. And also there has to be repercussions if someone has not complied with it. See, we have to understand, we are a trust. We are here in the capacity of shareholders' funds. So we are, the shareholders trust us, the board trusts us. So if there is a mismanagement, there has to be a repercussion. So someone who has not complied with the DOA should be called out. It should reflect in their performance rating. So that these are important aspects, and which helps bring about discipline.
But sir, have you taken any step to bring the focus that the unit itself is not a profit center, so that they do not compete with each other, even if for a smaller quantity, if they are competing in their region with each other, it's a loss to the group itself.
Absolutely, right, Vikas. So absolutely. So we have, so, it is so there is, I don't know if you're familiar. So there is this concept of matrix organization. So wherein, the product is the primary axis. It is not, so the product becomes the primary axis and everything else revolves around it. You can have these multiple approaches, where the customer can become the primary axis, and you can have only one, irrespective of the number of products the customer is buying, only one sales representative is meeting the customer, so that there is no cross selling. Similarly, in our case, we had product as the focal point. So if there is a if there is an auto, if there is an aerospace, there will be only this specific individual who will be dealing with the customers. So we did that. And that is the power of a matrix organization, which allows you to bring in the right expertise. All individuals have a limitation in terms of expertise. So, and the matrix organization is a nice way to bring in multiple, the right depth and the breadth. The depth when you need for the subject matter, and the breadth for the holistic approach, the ecosystem, to bring in to address this. So we did that. So we have been doing it. That is a long journey. We keep embarking, we are on the path, and we keep doing improvements around it. But we have decided that product will be our primary axis, and all activities will revolve around it. So that helps. Yes, Jyoti, I see your hand raised, and you've also put in your question in the chat box.
on the chat box, I can just talk about it again. So, Hindalco and Novelis, it was a cross culture or a cross country acquisition, and generally what we have observed is that the challenges with respect to cross country acquisitions are usually far more, especially in terms of culture, aligning management systems, etc., etc. So, could you briefly tell us, a little bit about those challenges with respect to the acquisition, or otherwise in your experience, which any management should think a little more about, more from? Yeah, so there is a matrix on pre and post that you spoke about, but I want to know a little bit more about the practical challenges which need a very different degree of focus in such acquisitions.
No, absolutely, Jyoti. To my mind,
Hmm.
cultural integration is the most important aspect in a cross-country M&A transaction. Everything else is secondary. And you know what happens is we do not try to give it the requisite importance. We try to brush it aside, and that does not help. It has to be tackled. It has to be tackled upfront, Jyoti. That is what I believe in, and that is what we do. And how you achieve it?
Mm-hmm.
By communicating, being transparent. There is no such thing called over communication. I believe communicating, keep communicating with all honesty and transparency is the most important thing. If we are able to successfully communicate the vision, the end objective to the teams, it has a huge impact. We work with, absolutely right you are, we work with, people from various cultures. We have, China and Asia, US, or Europe. And someone mentioned initially it was a big struggle. The US executive found it very difficult to report to an Indian manager. Someone
Right.
who has worked, who knows, who believes, who knows everything. So the key, as I mentioned, it was about generation of trust. We we never tried to integrate in as a lock, stock, and barrel. We built bridges, as necessary. A bridge in the sales function, a bridge in the commercial function, a bridge in the HR function. We maintained the Novelis' core and ethos. We did not attack it. We sent in the expertise as necessary, build bridges as necessary. You know, just to give you an example, we laid it out very clearly that avoidance of a duty, a tax, is not something that we would support. This message is loud and clear. If anyone had any doubt, it was clear. A US, a Europe, they thought that we in India would like to avoid a duty, do things which are like saving tax, saving meaning beyond tax planning. We clearly said that is something not on our radar at all. So which
Right.
in a way, communicates it very, very clearly. When the funding financing came up, we showed Novelis's team the influence that we had on the global bankers, which generated a lot of trust with the Novelis management team on the Aditya Birla Group, management team.
Right.
The power that we had, the influence that we had on the bankers was phenomenal. The bankers respected the Aditya Birla Group because we have never ever defaulted on any loan whatsoever. So
Right.
that these are
Right.
the elements that you kind of help you build trust. And I completely agree. Cultural fitment is the most important thing in a successful M&A. I mean, all of you must have heard that famous saying, Peter Drucker, you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Irrespective of how strong your strategy is, if your cultural integration is weak, chances are you will fail.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir, for this useful insight.
Yeah. Moving on, Kiran, Jyoti, you may want to unraise your hand. Yeah, Kiran.
Yes, like you have covered it shortly, but I was like trying to ask, what were the financing challenges? How do you like strategize it? For example, Novelis would have been a big challenge in terms of like acquisition because it was multiple times of the size of, say, Hindalco's business. So, how it was tackled? What are the do's and don'ts? Like some strategies that would help such big transactions?
Sure, Kiran. See, I purposely avoided talking too much about the financing in my presentation. So you are right. I was sketchy about that. So Kiran, see, the point is it was 3 times the size of Hindalco. Novelis balance sheet was 3 times the size of Hindalco. So it was not a easy financing. So we used all the possible tools available in the rule book to do the financing. But a large portion of it was a leveraged, what you understand is a leveraged buyout. So a large portion of the debt was pushed on the Novelis's balance sheet. We used Novelis's balance sheet to borrow a lot of money. And when Novelis started delivering, we refinanced that debt and brought it down substantially. And of course, we had the element, we of course undertook the equity infusion through, whatever routes, the classic routes. And we did our structuring accordingly to have the minimal impact of the tax leakage. We had a holding company in between. So these are very nuanced discussions, Kiran. And, it would require a lot of deliberation but it was not an easy fix, let me tell you this much. Even as late as one day before the closure of the transaction, one of the large financial institutions, walked away from the deal. They said that their credit committee is not comfortable lending, 100 rupees as an example. They want to only lend 25 rupees. So we had to look for ways to get this 75 rupees or dollars. So it was not an easy transaction, but yes, I mean, we used a lot of, mix of all the playbook strategies, but most of it was leveraged buyout. So we pushed a lot of debt on the Novelis's balance sheet and we refinanced it when Novelis's performance improved.
Right. Thank you. Because like most of the cases, like every company would like to grow, every company would like to expand its business, but it is not as a luxury. Like sometimes it is too much for you to, like, the cake is very big, you cannot eat it kind of thing. So like it
So Kiran,
depends. Yes.
this is a good point that you bring out. And this is a good discussion point. See, I'll tell you. So it is all about, so absolutely right you are. So, while we may want to own the world, but we do not have that luxury. So how do we go about it? So Kiran, the rule is, here we have to have some ground rules. And this comes with discussions, with the promoters, with the shareholders. This is about the comfort. And I'll give you, examples you can relate to and you can look them up. So we have to have an end state leverage in mind. That means Kiran as an individual has a target leverage in mind. That means after 10 years, my leverage should not be more than 2x as an example. The 2x leverage I am comfortable with. But then that is the end state. But when you are growing, you may have a leverage which may jump in between 3x, 4x, 5x. That is something which you have to decide what is that leverage that you are comfortable with. And then what is your game plan to bring it down? And how do you want to bring it down? When do you want to get more equity infusion? When Reliance went about like the large, the Jamnagar refinery, Reliance's leverage went up very, very high. It crossed 5x. But that Reliance knew it was transient, that it will be at 5x for 2 years. Once the refinery starts, it will be able to bring that down. At the end of 5th year, it will tap the market because by that time, the asset has fully played out and the value is there. So it will go for an equity issuance as an example. And that is the game plan that we need to have when we are doing these large, large financing, transactions. And of course, see, it is important to have this discussion with the stakeholders. And here it is the bankers, the credit rating agencies, because see, they have So while we know our company, we know our ecosystem, they have exposure to a lot more. They know the external world and they will bring that expertise. So it's good to have a transparent dialogue with the rating agency, that where they believe should be the right leverage, where they believe they will be able to support the leverage. That is an important discussion to have, Kiran. And I would suggest, again, laying it out in black and white on a piece of paper. Doing a 10-year, financials, a high-level financials, laying it out. When do we deleverage? When do we leverage up? What is the maximum level of leverage that we are willing to play with? Do your sensitivities on your EBITDA. What happens if the market does not grow? What happens if the market degrows by 5%? Do you still have room? Will you be able to service your debt? So use all these sensitivities and decide on the level of debt that you want.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It was very helpful. Yes.
Thank you, Kiran. Moving on.
Yeah,
Dokania?
yeah, sir. It's a general question actually. We were
Please.
talking about this cultural fit.
Yeah.
See, this cultural fit comes into picture when Indian company acquires, foreign company. If we talk about vice versa, like a foreign company acquires Indian company, this are we not resistive? Like, are see, in my I have experienced in my previous companies, when the foreign company acquires, then immediately they bring in all their expats into board, all the leadership position. So is it because we are still developing country?
Good point. How do I address you? Do I call you,
Anything, sir. Rajan, hopefully
Rajan is
Rajan.
good? Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
That helps. So Rajan, that's a very valid point. And it goes back to our original discussion that as a country, we are still work in progress. We may, we are doing well, but that is something which, so we can take, let us take examples. Today in India, to do a M&A, it is not easy. To acquire an Indian company, you have to go through, apart from regulators, also through the promoters. You have to create in a buy-in with the promoters. A hostile takeover doesn't work in Indian scheme of things.
Yeah,
Doesn't work meaning doesn't largely work. Of course, it works, but doesn't largely work because we are still evolving on this map. Our rules, our regulations are less, amenable to a transaction. The today, you know, receivable discounting, a supplier credit is something which comes at a cost which is higher than normal in India. A credit insurance, not so easy to come by vis-a-vis a Western world. So which allows processes to work. If processes work, then individual becomes less important. We have to, as a country, I believe, we have a room to improve. We have a room to grow into these processes, wherein Indian executives, Indian executives are heading, all the who's who of the world.
yeah, yeah.
We all see that, but
Correct.
not in the domestic front. In the domestic front, we still allow individuals to take over the processes. And that is where these expats come in to run the company. So if we demonstrate that the processes are working, the legal framework is up and running, which is equal for everyone. There is, if someone is not paying up, there is a legal remedy, then these things will come down. Our
Yeah,
legal system does not give that comfort as yet. We still have to go through, the years and years of, courtroom battles to enforce a judgment, a lower court to a higher court to a higher court. And, each takes tens of years. And that is where the challenge is.
yeah,
People are not afraid of the legal, violating a legal, violating a rule. We find it, we find it relatively easy. I should not be saying this to, to play with the accounting policies. That
yeah, yeah. Yes.
reduces the the element, that brings in that individual element, and hence the need to send in expats.
Yeah,
If we demonstrate that the processes are working, I believe the need for the expats will come down. And of course, the developed country versus developing country debate is there. It will be there,
mm,
for a while. So that
for a
is
while.
something that we have to learn to live with. But So there are ways to address it. My limited point is, and I
Okay.
believe legal system is the most important aspect, the disclosures. Today, if you do something in US, a SEC letter, you have to reply to the SEC letter within that time frame.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
I don't know if any one of you have seen those SEC letters. Trust me, it is very, very difficult to respond to those SEC letters. The questions are very sharp, very pointed. In our case, SEBI, asks a question, we give a general reply, and we try to put an end
By time also.
by time. We are not aware. We on the borderline of truth. So that is a huge difference between. So of course we are. See, this is a phase, right? You
Yes.
cannot straight go to that US level of SEC on one day, the US gap accounting on one day. It's a journey. So we
Okay.
have to cross it one by one, and we will eventually. We are on the path. Things have
Yes, sir.
improved quite a bit with the GST coming in. With all the digitization of the income tax laws, rules. We are bringing more and more things into the tax net, which is helping. So that is the direction. So that is my belief, Rajan. So
Yes,
I,
sir.
I don't disagree with you. I agree with you that
Yes.
a lot of expats coming to run the Indian source. But I believe it's a matter of time. The confidence level will be there where we will entrust the Indian management to run the Indian
Yes,
companies.
sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for
Thank you,
explaining.
Rajan. Yes. Yes, Mr. Ramdev.
Yeah, Kaivalli here. So one question about internal and immediate team. You talked about M&A process, a lot of research work identifying target, going through due diligence. All this is a lot of research and partly estimates and judgments. Now, your internal immediate teams, even if you enroll external agencies, still, how do you manage the time-bound responses from this team? How do you structure that? If you can uh, put some light on.
No, very well said, Mr. Damle. Absolutely. It is about estimates, whether it is internal or external, that you get the right. See, that is the point. And hence, it is important to get the right experts. The people who understand the subject. So it is very, so that is where the role of experts come in. At times we try to cut corners. We believe that we know better and what is the value that a external expert would bring in. More often than not, it is better to have someone to challenge our thought process, our valuations, to bring out, it allows for a good discussion. Of course, it comes with a cost, a small cost, I would say, but it, kind of helps us cement our assumptions and our, working rules. So that clearly is important. Now, as far as discipline and timeline is concerned, it is, see, when we are running a transaction, it has to be in a disciplined mode. There has to be a certain level of cadence that we all have to follow. Depending on what stage the transaction is, there can be a weekly cadence. We every Friday you decide. You discuss with your participants, you discuss with your counterparties and arrive at a certain cadence that you want to do it on a weekly basis. When the transaction is at an early stage, you can do it on a weekly basis. Transaction moving with speed, you decide that you do a all hands call every day, 15 minutes at noon. That just to touch base that everything is on track, everything is moving as per schedule. And these things are now very easy with the Zoom meetings, with the Teams meeting, with the dial-ins. So these things have become relatively easy. So it is about the discipline and the cadence that we, kind of choose. The counterparties are very professional agencies, in my experience, whether it is the legal firms, whether it is the merchant bankers, whether it is the advisors, they are very, very professional agencies. And they kind of come with a clear plan of, who is working on what aspect, who will be responsible for what aspect. And in the today, I mean, I don't know about your experience, but today we prepare a sheet at the beginning of a transaction with names, phone numbers and email IDs of the people who would be involved in the transaction, what will be their role. So we know upfront that whom do we call if we need any advice on tax, on indirect taxes, on a legal structuring. So those things. So they are very professional. So it is up to us how we drive them. and the cadence that we set with them. And that kind of works as far as I have seen. Of course, there will be delays, there will be challenges, because there are multiple things. It is not a unidimensional world. So there will be challenges, but it's something that we have to decide what is it that is not negotiable and what is it that can live for another day, and we play accordingly.
Yeah, just follow up to that. I mean, that makes very sense. But at the early stage where you are zeroing on a target,
Yeah.
right? Is it more like a top down, or because this is a place where there can be a lot of chaos and confusion. Everybody can have different thoughts and ideas. So how that communication gets structured within the organization where you zoom in on?
Sure. No, I would not say it is a top-down approach. I would say it is more of a participative approach. It has to be, but yes, someone will have to be, someone will have to anchor, you will have to appoint, kind of captain, who, irrespective of the management designation. So the captain knows, when to call for a timeout and what discussion to take it to what level. Otherwise, if you open up a discussion, it can go on for 2 hours without reaching to any conclusion. So I completely agree with you. So there has to be a captain which allows, which kind of forces the discussion to stop, a timeout, at a certain stage. And on the targets, we have to be clear. See, it is an evolving thing. Initially, we may believe we want a target which should not cost more than $1 billion, as an example to start with. And when we go and we scout and we look around, we realize that for that $1 billion, nothing is available that is worth chasing. So we then move around and we move it to let's say whatever is our allowed threshold, we take it to 1.2 as an example, and then we know what is it that we are looking for, the core, but there will be peripherals associated with it, which is something that we are not wanting, but then that there has to be exit strategy around it. So that, because if the crux of the target fits in well in our strategy, then we move forward with that. And obviously, we have to have options here, because moving forward with just one transaction, one target in mind may not work out. It may lead to a lot of waste of time, because if you start, there has to be some, we have to zero down on the targets in parallel, so that we have 2-3 targets in mind that we want to chase if we are, if we face a bottleneck at one target level. So it is, I would believe it is about having an internal discipline with a right kind of captain to maneuver the team.
Thank you for that.
Sure. Yes, moving on, Manish.
Yeah, as the scheme of the merger is to be approved by the respective honorable courts, NCLT and all. So what factors they consider before giving the approval, especially the protecting the interest of the employees?
So Manish, we would like to avoid going into the legal and the tax specific discussion in this, in this discussion. Otherwise, it would, we will have to call for the right kind of subject matter experts. But so obviously the simple, the more broader elements that we all look for, we want to test is the dominant effect. Whether does it give you a dominating power, so that we go through all the antitrust thing. Are you, the minority, the end objective is protecting the interest of the minority shareholder, the minority partners. So those are the standard elements, but that is something which we will have to probably, get the right legal experts to talk about. I'm sorry, Manish, this is something which, I believe, which is, beyond my level of expertise, to talk to this August gathering about. So, I would not want to venture into something which is not my area of expertise.
Okay.
If you have anything else, otherwise we move on.
Yeah, hi. Yeah. Just wanted to know, see, if you are a target company and in many cases the company who is getting the target, the leadership get changes. So what should be the leadership role if you are a target company, if you are a CFO of that company, or if you are a CEO of that company? How should the target company CEO or CFO should approach toward this transaction? Because many cases we see that the CEO and CFO get asked to go, and promoters just take their share, and they also exit in many cases.
And this is the mindset, Anup. That is what I was trying to address. Exactly the point. See, this is the point. See, if I am the CFO of a target company, my objective here will be to be as transparent, as clear as I can be. I have to be professional in my approach, meaning the transaction may go through, may not go through. So I have to be mindful of that. So whenever I'm sharing information, I have to be clear on the competitive information that I am sharing, irrespective of what is the level of NDA that I may have signed. Sharing a specific list of a customer or a supplier, I will have to be mindful of this, because it is not guaranteed that we will close the transaction, and I do not want to be put in a competitive disadvantage if the transaction does not go through. But at the same time, I have to be as transparent, as clear about about my company as I can be. Because see, so this is about the element of trust. This is about having the right amount of trust, the evergreen trust. I may be chosen to continue. The underlying assumption is, if I am continuing in this company, if this deal goes through, if I am continuing in this company, I should not be accused of not laying out the right amount of information in front of the acquirer. I should not be trying to, use means to hide information. If I do not know something, and then by virtue of that, I have not disclosed enough, that is acceptable. That is an omission. But trying to hide something or trying to portray a picture which is different from the reality is clearly not something which a professional should get involved with. Obviously, the promoter will walk away. Chances are the promoter will sell their stake and walk away, or if at all, they may continue with a smaller stake. So promoter will go away, that is for sure. But as a professional, as a CEO, as a CFO, the chances are that, whether you continue in this company or other company, you will continue, one will continue, and so it has to be in the professional spirit. Obviously, that does not mean that I lay out everything, which may put my company at a competitive disadvantage.
But to get motivation from the team, like you may be motivated, that some or other way you will go other company and join it. But get motivation from the company is like something challenging. When the team knows that the acquirer company is going to change the CFO or the leadership team, it's very difficult to get it done from the juniors.
No, absolutely, Anup, absolutely. I understand. We may discuss in the boardroom, we may debate in the boardroom that it may change the fortunes, and you may have a more stronger entity coming in, someone with a more, a better financial, bandwidth coming in, which will mean expansion, which will mean growth. So while we may debate that in the boardroom, but to communicate, to get that same sentiment to the team is not easy. So obviously, it is about communicating. See, Anup, I personally believe truth is our biggest friend and ally. So we should share what to the best extent that we know. And I said, the communication cannot just be restricted to the boardroom if the deal has to succeed. It has to cascade, it has to flow to all levels of the organization. Then only, the organization has a buy-in into the transaction one way or another. So it is important, the right amount of communication, being truthful about the transaction to the best of our knowledge is our only friend. And of course, see, today every individual has access, Google is there with everyone. So the speed at which one can access the information, the quantum of information is very different what it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So even if we say, that no, this is, people will be able to Google, and people will be able to know about the acquirer. What is it that the value that acquirer is bringing in? What is it that it is in it for us? Does it take our company forward or not? See, more often than not, 9 out of 10, an acquisition will mean growth in some form. Whether new capital coming in, moving into a new geography, moving into a new product line. So 9 out of 10 times it will be accompanied with growth. And that is the story that we communicate and share with the team. And if you are allowed, if you have the luxury, it would be good to have a nice incentive, a financial incentive built in for the extra work that the team is undertaking. If you have that leeway, if you have that room to discuss with the promoter, and if you can lay out a nice incentive plan for the team at the end of the transaction, that always helps. That creates that, extra motivation for the team to deliver on time.
Thanks, really helpful.
Sure, Anup.
Yeah, thank you, Manish, for sharing your great ideas and all. Really, this will be helpful. Just one normal question only. We have acquired maybe so many companies, and we have success also. Any failure story and that how we are handling board and all. Like we have acquired but not success or not as per expectation. So how to handle the question of board and all these things? Any any input on any highlight or any point?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Failures are integral part of success.
Yeah,
There
correct.
is no failure, there is no success. So yes, while we have done reasonably well, we have our share of failures, So I gave you some examples where we divested, exited. We acquired copper mines in Australia, for integration of our copper business in India. After a while, we realized that that is something which is not working out for us. That is a business that has its very different set of value drivers, a very nuanced business which requires a different set of expertise, which probably we do not have because of our limited understanding, limited play, limited bandwidth. It is better fit with a mining company who has multiple assets in multiple geographies. So we divested and we exited and we sold it out to a bigger mining player. Of course, we had to explain to our management the quarter, the results, the performance, the non-delivery. That is something we had to demonstrate. And we had to also then realize that, and see, the rule is, which again, I say that don't shy away from experimenting. Please experiment, fail, bounce back. Do your experiments, fail quickly and bounce back quickly. No point dragging something which you believe, which you understand is not playing out. So we had those discussions in our management meetings. We lay it out. We say that what is not working out. We are trying. These are the things that we are trying. We give an update that what is working on those those initiatives. And at some point of time, we realize that this is it.
We have to tell the truth on time.
Absolutely. Telecom, we goofed up big time. We are living with that for a while now. So it is not something a mistake which we did, but then the rules changed, the regulations changed. And the timing of our transaction was such that, after we closed the transaction, there was a huge, change in the legal position, which had a huge impact on the industry. Everyone suffered. We suffered the most. So telecom is a clear story of our failure. And, how we are trying to come back. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Any more questions, guys?
Yes, sir.
So just extending the same question, like you started with that around 80% of the acquisitions or M&A fails. So I am sure that for Aditya Birla, it is reverse also. So maybe 80% succeed. So just want to reconfirm on that. So what is the
No,
ratio
absolutely,
for-
Kundip. You are right. Absolutely. So for us, the success rate is very, very high. I know, absolutely. As high as, it will be in that range of 88, 85%.
Okay.
It is. See, Kundip, the point is, it is like, we giving up on something. And it is like we persevering with something and making it happen. So, that is what has been seen. Probably, you all understand and, you are all from, you are doing this, attending this IMF, classes, so you understand how it works. Probably by the Indian standards, we have grown at a pace which is slower, by compared to the other industrial houses. Other industrial houses probably have grown faster than the Aditya Birla Group. They have moved ahead in terms of market capitalization, value creation, whatnot. But that is something which, our chairman says, that is something we are okay with. If abiding by our values mean that we grow at a pace slower than what we would desire, then so be it. So that is the philosophy that is embedded in the Aditya Birla Group organization. And that is something which we live by. And so which is probably the key reason why our M&As are more, successful relative to the industry average. So like I said, we believe in trust, we believe in partnership, we believe in evergreen trust. ऐसा नहीं होता है कि आज मैं आप पे trust करूंगा और कल नहीं करूंगा. That doesn't work. If I trust on you 100. It is not like I trust you 99, but I don't trust you 1. It doesn't work that way. So that is the difference.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So good. Rajan, you want to say something?
Nothing, sir. No, I just want to thank you. That's it. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It was a wonderful session, in fact, today.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate this.
Insightful, sir, in fact. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I really appreciate these discussions, which gives me some perspectives to think, right? When I go back, I think there's something, it's like a dialogue, with both, I also learn, I also, it gives me that advantage. Yes, Vikas, I'll come to
Yes,
you.
sir.
So, that is why I enjoy these discussions. And I know it's a Sunday for all of you and you have, put in time to sit through this. So
Yes, sir.
appreciate it and thank you. And I
Thank
always
you.
hope that it is worthwhile, and me coming from the industry background, it helps, relate to probably the questions or the points that you have in mind.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Vikas.
Sir, it's whether you have been in discussion with Alcoa for any kind of the tie-up, any kind of the collaboration or the merger.
Yeah, we have done a lot of discussion with Alco at different points of time.
Okay, so because we you just showcase a slide where you have made the comparison for the Novelis, Alcoa. So is there any main reasons that the why the Hindalco is not going with the Alcoa, though it is a big player?
So yeah, Vikas, yes. See, one is obviously we see value. We don't want to overpay for a transaction and we see the strategic fitment. And in our upstream story, Alcoa is an upstream player, as you know. You are talking about Alcoa downstream or Alcoa upstream? Because Alcoa downstream is
They are
Arconic.
into, yeah, they have been split into two, because actually I have been a part of the Alcoa India, as Fale said,
Arconic.
for the last 3 years.
So
Yeah,
Vikas, that's what
Arconic.
I'm saying. So you are referring to Alcoa or you are referring to Arconic?
I am referring to the Arconic. Earlier it was the Alcoa when you were, I think, in the discussion with them for the
Correct.
upstream.
Correct. So because we realized that that the transaction, so we were clear, right? On the upstream, we do not want to go the buy route, and we want to build organically, and hence we chose to build organically the Hindalco portfolio, right? We put in new expansions, Mahan, Aditya, Utkal. Since you are familiar with the industry, And so Alcoa had both of those assets put in together, and the upstream was of low interest to us and of high value to them. So it was not working out. On the downstream, because we realized that they have a lot of businesses, we would have to go the antitrust route for a lot of things, which we will have to divest a lot of assets. And there were some businesses within the Alcoa's portfolio now, Arconic, the engineering services division mainly, which was generating very high value for them, but which was not fitting in our scheme of things. That is something which we were not being able to ascribe value to it. And that, kind of made it very difficult for us to go through any transaction. We engaged multiple times, but we could not close in on any transaction.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
So good. Thank you, everyone. I will take my leave, ladies and gentlemen, and you can continue with your, discussion. So So thank you, Rusali. Thank you, everyone.
Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments below what topic we should dive into next.